The cabin tilts at 17 degrees, roof caved beneath 40 years of Montana snow. Inside, scattered among rotted beaver pelts and rusted traps, lies a leather journal bound with sinew. The cover bears teeth marks, deep gouges too wide for any wolf. Park Ranger Sarah Chen finds it during a routine patrol near Glacier's eastern boundary. October 2023. The pages crackle like autumn leaves, stained with something dark that might be blood, might be grease, might be both. The handwriting belongs to someone whose hands shook. Day 12. It follows still. Thomas says I imagine things, but the tracks don't lie. Wide as my palm, claws like railroad spikes. We moved camp twice. It moves with us. Chen photographs each page before the elements claim them. The journal spans 3 weeks in November 1823. 4 trappers running beaver lines along the Rocky Mountain front. By the final entry, only one man's handwriting remains. The last page holds a single line. God help whoever finds this. 40 miles south, modern rancher Dale Whitehorse keeps a .45-70 government loaded beside his kitchen window. Some nights when the wind carries howls down from the timberline, he knows why. November 3rd, 1823. The Marias River cuts through high country where the Great Plains meet the Rocky Mountain front. 4 men work the beaver streams with the methodical patience of those who understand winter's approach. Jacob Hartwell leads the party. 28 years old, 5 seasons trapping the Missouri headwaters, his journal records weather, trap counts, beaver sign with the precision of a man whose survival depends on details. Thomas Brennan handles the pack animals, 16 mules carrying supplies for a 2-month run. Samuel Crawford and William Hayes work the trap lines, wading chest-deep in water that turns their breath to vapor. The routine establishes itself within days. Rise before dawn, check overnight sets, move to new water. Skin the catch, stretch pelts, set new traps. Evening camp, hot coffee, tobacco if supplies allow. Sleep in rotating watches because the country holds grizzlies, mountain lions, Blackfeet war parties. Normal dangers, known quantities. Hartwell's journal from November 5th. Fine weather continues. Brennan's mare cast a shoe on rocky ground near Birch Creek. Crawford took 11 beaver from the lower pools. Good fur, prime winter coats. Hayes reports fresh grizzly sign upriver but no encounters. We maintain watch schedule. By November 7th, the entries change tone. Large tracks found circling camp perimeter. Wolf sign, but oversized. Brennan estimates 200 pounds or better. No livestock taken, but the mules show unease. We'll investigate further tomorrow. November 8th brings the first clear measurement. Hayes, a former surveyor from Pennsylvania, possesses calipers for precise work. The track he finds in creek mud measures 7 inches from heel to toe, 5 inches across the pad. Claw marks extend another 2 inches forward. For comparison, a large gray wolf leaves tracks 4 inches long, 3 inches wide. Hayes sketches the print in Hartwell's journal, adding careful measurements. The drawing shows a paw larger than a man's outstretched hand, claws like kitchen knives, a heel pad broad as a silver dollar. That evening, Crawford notices the mules bunched tight against their picket lines, ears swiveling toward the dark timber. The animals refuse their evening grain, standing rigid with nostrils flared. Brennan doubles the watch schedule. 2 men awake at all times. November 9th. It called last night, 3 times between midnight and dawn. Hayes says he's heard wolf song from Alaska to the Platte River, but nothing like this. The sound carries too far, shakes too deep. Even the coals in our fire seemed to dim when it howled. The party camps that night beside Blackfoot Creek, 20 miles north of their previous site. Fresh location, different drainage, new territory. The tracks appear by dawn, circling their camp in a wide arc, staying just beyond firelight's reach. The same massive paws, the same impossible measurements, as if the creature knew exactly where they would go. Crawford finds something else that morning. One of their beaver traps, reset the previous evening in a prime location, lies crushed beside the creek. The steel spring, capable of breaking a man's leg, bears compression marks as if squeezed in a massive vise. The trap's chain, forged iron thick as a man's thumb, shows deep gouges. No beaver in the trap, no blood, just destruction delivered with surgical precision. Hayes examines the damage with his surveyor's eye for detail. The bite marks follow no pattern I recognize. Canines, certainly, but spaced wider than any wolf, and the pressure required to crush this steel. We're talking about jaw strength beyond any living animal I know. Hartwell's journal entry that day reads simply, "We are being hunted." November 10th brings a decision. The party breaks camp early, packs light, abandons their trap lines for higher ground. If something stalks them, better to hold elevation advantage, better to see it coming. They climb toward the Continental Divide, following deer trails through pine stands and aspen groves. The mules labor under reduced loads, but move steadier away from the creek bottoms. The men speak little, conserve energy, scan the forest with new attention to shadows and movement. By evening, they reach a meadow 7,000 feet above sea level. Open ground on three sides, cliff face behind them, good defensive position. Crawford gathers deadfall for a large fire. Hayes and Brennan set watchposts with clear sight lines. Hartwell writes by firelight, "High camp achieved, good visibility, protected flanks. If it follows us here, we'll see it coming." The men show strain but remain steady. Crawford jokes about wolf pelts, fetching good prices in St. Louis. Still, he keeps his rifle loaded and close. Full darkness settles over the meadow. The temperature drops toward freezing. Stars emerge in crystalline clarity. Wind carries the scent of snow from higher peaks. At 11:47 p.m., based on Hartwell's pocket watch, the howling begins. Not from the timber below, where a normal predator might lurk. Not from distant ridges where sound travels far in thin air. The voice rises from the cliff face directly behind their camp, from rock walls they assumed provided protection. The sound builds slowly, starting low in a register that vibrates through bedrock and bone. It climbs through octaves no wolf throat should reach, sustaining notes that seem to last minutes without breath. When it finally fades, the silence feels heavier than before. Crawford's joke about wolf pelts dies unfinished. Hayes checks his rifle's percussion cap twice. Brennan moves closer to the fire. Hartwell closes his journal that night without further comment. Some observations require no words. November 11th begins with discovery. Their supply cache, secured the previous night with rope and canvas, sits open. Not torn or clawed, but carefully unpacked. Jerky and hardtack remain untouched. Coffee beans scattered in perfect circles around the camp perimeter. Salt pork hung from tree branches 12 feet off the ground. The message seems clear. I know where you sleep. I know what you carry. I am not hungry for your food. Hayes finds tracks leading from their camp toward the cliff face. The same oversized paws, but now they show something new. Claw marks that gouge through hard-packed earth and bedrock, cutting stone as if it were clay. More unsettling. The tracks approach to within 10 feet of their sleeping area, circle twice, then retreat. The creature stood close enough to count their heartbeats while they slept. Crawford discovers the final violation. His spare powder horn, kept in his personal pack, bears fresh punctures. Precise holes that leak black powder in thin streams, each hole exactly the diameter of a large canine tooth. It could have killed us in our sleep, Hartwell writes. Instead, it played with our supplies like a house cat with wounded mice. This is not animal behavior. This is something else. The party abandons the high meadow by noon. Staying means accepting the creature's terms of engagement. Moving offers at least the illusion of control. They descend toward Birch Creek, following game trails through lodgepole pine forests. The trees grow thick here, limiting visibility but providing concealment. Double-edged protection in country where something large moves with predatory intent. Brennan notices it first. The forest has gone quiet. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter, no insects. Even the wind seems muffled among the pine needles. The silence stretches too wide, covers too much territory, as if something large enough to intimidate every living creature within miles moves parallel to their path. They stop frequently to listen, scan the timber, check their back trail. Nothing visible but the oppressive. Quiet follows them like smoke. By evening, they reach Birch Creek's North Fork. The water runs clear and cold, perfect beaver habitat, but they find no fresh sign, no cuttings, no dams, no lodges, as if every beaver for miles has simply vanished. Hayes wades out to check an old dam site. The structure remains intact but abandoned. Recent abandonment based on the fresh mud and stick work, perhaps within days of their arrival in the area. Even the beavers know, Crawford mutters while setting up their evening camp. Even the damn beavers know to run. That night, they establish overlapping watches. Hartwell and Hayes take first shift, Crawford and Brennan second shift. 2 hours on, 2 hours rest, repeat until dawn. 4 loaded rifles, extra percussion caps, powder kept dry. At 1:30 a.m., Hayes spots movement across the creek, a shadow among shadows, but wrong somehow. Too large, too fluid, moving with purpose through timber that should stop anything bigger than a man. Hayes watches for 10 minutes before waking Hartwell. By the time Hartwell reaches the watch position, the shadow has vanished, but the tracks remain. Fresh prints in creek mud, 20 yards from their camp. The same massive paws, but these show something new. The stride length measures 42 inches from track to track. Hayes does the mathematics. A wolf with legs long enough to cover 42 inches in a single step stands over 4 feet at the shoulder, larger than any wolf species in recorded natural history. We're hunting something, Hartwell writes in his journal, or something is hunting us. The distinction matters less each day. November 14th breaks gray and cold with snow flurries that stick to pine needles before melting. The weather matches the men's mood, grim, uncertain, waiting for something to break. Crawford takes point as they follow Birch Creek upstream. His Pennsylvania rifle stays ready across his chest, percussion cap fresh, 40 grains of powder behind a .45 caliber ball. Behind him, Hayes leads the pack train while Brennan and Hartwell cover the flanks. They travel in sight of each other always. No man strays beyond rifle range, the buddy system enforced with military precision. By noon, they reach a beaver meadow where Birch Creek spreads across several channels. Good trapping water, the kind that would normally have them setting lines and planning extended stays. Instead, they pass through quickly, eyes scanning the willow thickets and cattail marshes for movement. Crawford finds the tree. A massive cottonwood, 3 feet in diameter, bearing claw marks from ground level to 15 feet up the trunk. Fresh gouges that spiral around the bark like a barber's pole. Each mark cuts deep enough to expose the white heartwood beneath. But the height disturbs them most. 15 feet up the trunk, well beyond any known predator's reach, the claw marks show the same width and depth as those at ground level. As if something climbed the tree using its claws like grappling hooks or something with limbs long enough to reach that high while standing on the ground. Hayes takes careful measurements while the others maintain watch. Claw marks 6 inches long, half an inch deep, spaced 4 inches apart. The pattern suggests 4 toes plus dew claw, standard canine anatomy but scaled to impossible proportions. It's marking territory, Hayes observes while sketching the damage in Hartwell's journal. Same as any wolf, but this territory claim covers 15 vertical feet. That's the size of a small cabin. They move past the cottonwood with new urgency. The claw marks feel too fresh, too deliberate, a sign posted for their specific benefit. By 3:30 p.m., they reach another creek junction where Two Medicine River flows down from the mountains. Here they must choose. Follow Birch Creek toward lower country and eventual civilization, or turn upstream toward the high peaks and whatever lives in the alpine zones. Crawford argues for heading down. We've got good pelts, enough to make the season profitable. Time to get clear of this country while we still can. Hayes disagrees. We leave now. We'll always wonder. And next season, some other poor bastards will come up here unprepared. At least we know what we're dealing with. Brennan and Hartwell remain silent during the debate. The decision carries weight beyond their immediate survival. Finally, Hartwell makes the call. One more day upstream. If we find nothing conclusive, we head for lower country. They make camp that evening in a grove of ancient pines, trees too large for anything to mark or destroy. The fire burns bright against trunks 5 feet in diameter, casting dancing shadows through the cathedral space between them. During first watch, Hartwell and Crawford sit back to back, rifles across their knees, scanning opposite directions. The forest around them stays quiet, but not empty. Something moves just beyond their sight, paralleling their position, keeping pace with their breathing. At 11:15 p.m., Crawford announces he needs to relieve himself. Protocol requires the buddy system, but Crawford waves off Hartwell's offer to accompany him. 30 yards to those rocks, in plain sight the whole way. Keep the fire between us and watch my back. Crawford walks toward a cluster of granite boulders, rifle in one hand, personal needs requiring the other. He disappears behind the rocks for perhaps 90 seconds. When he doesn't emerge, Hartwell calls his name. No response. Hartwell wakes Hayes and Brennan, approaches the rocks with loaded weapons and burning pine branch for light. Behind the largest boulder, Crawford's rifle leans against stone, percussion cap still in place, powder still dry. No blood, no sign of struggle, no tracks in the hard ground around the rocks. Crawford has simply vanished, as completely as if the earth opened and swallowed him. They search until dawn with torches and lanterns. Hayes applies his surveyor's methodical approach, establishing a grid, pattern around the camp, marking each searched area with stones. Brennan climbs trees for elevated observation points. Hartwell follows every game trail within half a mile. Nothing. No trace of their companion, no indication of where he went or how. Only one new discovery. A tuft of coarse hair caught on a pine branch 7 feet off the ground. Dark brown, almost black, each strand thick as cordage. Hayes examines it with his field glass, noting the texture and length. Wolf hair, but wrong, he tells the others. Too coarse, too long, and no wolf reaches 7 feet up a tree branch. Hartwell's journal entry that morning: Crawford gone. Vanished without trace or sound while we watched. Whatever stalks us moves with stealth beyond any natural predator. We are 3 now, and it knows. November 16th finds them following 2 Medicine River upstream, tracking something that may or may not want to be found. The decision to hunt rather than flee comes without discussion. Crawford's disappearance changed the mathematics of survival. Running means leaving him behind. Hunting means possible answers. Hayes leads now, his surveyor's training useful for reading sign and terrain. He finds tracks in mud beside the river, the same massive paws they've followed for days, but fresher now. Perhaps hours old rather than overnight. The tracks head upstream toward the mountain wall, following a route that would challenge experienced mountaineers. Steep terrain, loose rock, exposure to weather and avalanche danger. Difficult country for men carrying rifles and supplies. Perfect country for something that moves through vertical landscape like level ground. They climb for 3 hours, gaining elevation rapidly, leaving the timber behind for alpine meadows and exposed ridges. The air thins noticeably, each breath requiring more effort, their movements slowing despite the urgency. At 9,000 feet, Brennan spots the cave, a dark opening in a limestone cliff face, perhaps 20 feet wide, extending back into darkness beyond their vision. Fresh tracks lead directly to the entrance, disappearing into the shadows like a highway leading home. Outside the cave, scattered in the rocks and alpine grass, lie objects that shouldn't exist at this elevation. A bone white from weathering, but too large for elk or moose. A scrap of fabric that might be buckskin, might be Crawford's jacket. A piece of metal that could be part of a trap or part of a rifle. Hayes examines each item with scientific precision. The bone shows tooth marks consistent with their measurements. Canines spaced impossibly wide, jaw pressure capable of crushing large mammals. The fabric bears the same marks, torn rather than cut, pulled apart by something with tremendous grip strength. The metal fragment comes from a rifle stock, shattered rather than bent, steel screws twisted like soft wire. Crawford's in there, Brennan states with flat certainty. Dead or alive, he's in there. Hartwell studies the cave entrance through his field glass. The opening extends beyond his vision, angling back into the mountain with multiple passages and chambers. Perfect ambush country for anything that knows the terrain. But they've come too far to stop at the threshold. They enter the cave at noon, torches burning in one hand, rifles ready in the other. Hayes leads with his surveyor's lamp, a better light source than open flame. The passage slopes downward into limestone chambers carved by centuries of water flow. The smell hits them immediately. Not decay, exactly, but something wild and musky, mixed with the metallic scent of old blood. The odor grows stronger as they penetrate deeper, following fresh tracks in the sandy cave floor. 50 yards from the entrance, they find Crawford's pack. Still tied shut, contents intact, but bearing puncture marks from massive teeth. The pack sits beside a pile of bones, some fresh, some weathered white. Elk, deer, possibly mountain sheep, all showing the same crushing bite marks they've learned to recognize. But no human remains. Crawford is somewhere deeper in the cave system, alive or dead. The passages branch here, splitting into 3 separate routes. Hayes marks their entry path with cairns, surveyor's discipline applied to life or death navigation. They choose the center passage, following the freshest tracks. The tunnel narrows, forcing them to move single file. Their lights create dancing shadows on limestone walls, shadows that could hide anything. Every sound echoes strangely. Their breathing, their footsteps, the drip of water from stalactites. After 200 yards, the passage opens into a large chamber. Their lights reveal a cathedral space, perhaps 100 feet across, with multiple entrances and a ceiling that disappears into darkness above. And in the center of the chamber, Crawford sits propped against a boulder, very much alive. "Took you long enough," he says with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. "Been waiting here since yesterday, listening to that thing move around in the back passages." Relief floods through them until they notice the details. Crawford's right leg lies at an odd angle, clearly broken. His rifle sits beyond arm's reach, empty and cleaned. Most tellingly, his pack and supplies remain 20 yards away, too far for a man with a shattered leg to retrieve. "How have you survived?" Hayes asks. "No food, no fire, broken leg and freezing temperatures." Crawford's grin widens. "Oh, I haven't been alone. It brings me things. Water in its mouth like a dog, pieces of meat, mostly fresh, even brought me Crawford's jacket when I got cold. The slip hits them like a physical blow." Crawford referring to himself in third person as if speaking about someone else. Brennan raises his rifle instinctively. Hayes steps sideways for better position. Hartwell keeps his torch high, scanning the chamber's dark recesses. "Who are you?" Hartwell asks quietly. The thing wearing Crawford's face tilts its head with predatory curiosity. "I am what your people call Shunka Warakan, the one who carries off dogs. My people, the Blackfeet, know me by older names. Its voice carries overtones impossible for human vocal cords, harmonics that resonate through the limestone chamber like multiple speakers talking in unison." "Where is our friend?" Hayes demands, rifle-trained center mass. "Sleeping," it replies, gesturing toward the back passages, dreaming of home while his body heals. "I needed his shape, his memories, his knowledge of your language. He will return when I no longer require them." The explanation carries the matter-of-fact tone of someone describing ordinary business. No malice, no emotion, just practical necessity. Brennan's rifle wavers slightly. "You can wear human shapes?" "Many shapes," it confirms. "Wolf serves for hunting, but human serves for conversation. Your friend taught me words, showed me memories of your world beyond these mountains. Fascinating place, your civilization." Hartwell lowers his torch slightly, fighting the urge to simply shoot and run. "What do you want from us?" The creature considers this carefully. Understanding, perhaps. "Your kind spreads across my territory like floodwater. Soon there will be many trappers, then settlers, then cities. I must decide whether to adapt or resist. And Crawford will be returned unharmed once our conversation concludes. I am not your enemy unless you make me one." The chamber falls silent except for water dripping in distant passages. 3 men face something wearing their friend's body, something that speaks of wearing shapes like clothing and treats human consciousness as a temporary borrowing. Hayes, ever the pragmatist, asks the crucial question, "How do we know you'll keep your word?" The creature smiles with Crawford's mouth, but the expression belongs to something else entirely. "Because you will tell others about this meeting, and the story you tell will determine how many others come hunting for me. If you threaten us, I threaten no one. But I promise that any who come seeking to trap or kill me will find the hunt more challenging than expected." It rises smoothly, despite Crawford's broken leg, movement fluid and wrong for human anatomy. "Your friend will wake beside the creek tomorrow, whole and unharmed. He will remember this as fevered dreams brought on by his injuries. And if we tell others what we've seen, then they will call you liars or madmen. But some will come anyway, drawn by the story itself. And I will be waiting." The creature that wears Crawford's shape begins walking toward the rear passages, moving with impossible grace on a shattered leg. At the edge of their torchlight, it pauses. Tell them I am patient. Tell them I am curious about their world, but tell them also that this mountain is mine and will remain so. It vanishes into darkness, leaving them alone in the limestone cathedral with only their lights and the sound of distant water. Hayes marks the date carefully in his journal, November 17th, 1823. The morning they find Crawford beside 2 Medicine Creek, unconscious but breathing, his broken leg somehow whole. No sign of cave or creature, no evidence of the previous day's encounter, except the memories burned into 3 men's minds. Crawford wakes with fragmented recollections, pain from the fall, darkness, something large moving in shadows. Fever dreams, he calls them, accepting Hartwell's explanation about delirium from cold and injury. The alternative explanation sits too far outside his understanding to consider seriously. They return to lower country without further incident. The oppressive silence lifts from the forest. Normal wildlife sounds resume. Their mules calm and graze peacefully, as if whatever presence followed them has simply withdrawn, satisfied with the message delivered. Hartwell completes his journal during the 3-day descent to the Marias River. His entries become factual, meteorological, focused on beaver counts and pelt quality. The supernatural elements vanish from his written record, replaced by practical observations about weather and game sign. But in the journal's final pages, written by firelight on their last night in the high country, a different tone emerges. We were chosen for a purpose, not as victims, but as messengers. Something lives in these mountains that remembers when ice covered the plains, when different creatures ruled the continent. It watches our expansion westward with ancient eyes and alien intelligence. Crawford remembers nothing, which may be mercy. Hayes and Brennan speak little of what transpired, which may be wisdom. But someone must record the truth, even if that truth remains unbelievable. Others will come, trappers, miners, settlers, soldiers. They will bring rifles and traps and the certainty that humans dominate all landscapes. Most will live ordinary lives, trap ordinary game, build ordinary settlements. But some will venture too far into the high country. Some will follow game trails toward the Timberline where ancient things still hunt. And when they return, if they return, they will carry stories that sound like fever, dreams, or frontier madness. Let this journal stand as warning and witness. We are not alone on this continent. We share these mountains with something older and stranger than our maps acknowledge. The 4 trappers reach the Missouri River on November 22, 1823. They sell their pelts at Fort Union for excellent prices, winter their gear, and plan next season's routes. Normal mountain men pursuing normal business in the westward expansion of American commerce. Crawford returns to Pennsylvania the following spring. He takes a wife, raises children, operates a successful dry goods store. In 40 years of life after Montana, he never again ventures west of the Mississippi River. Hayes continues trapping for another decade, but avoids the Rocky Mountain front. He maps extensive territory throughout the northern plains, contributes valuable geographic information to early territorial surveys, dies peacefully in St. Louis surrounded by family. Brennan disappears entirely from historical records after 1823. No death certificate, no marriage license, no land claims or legal documents. As if he simply walked back into the wilderness and never emerged. Hartwell's journal surfaces in 1889, discovered among effects of his deceased daughter in Baltimore. She donates it to the Maryland Historical Society, where it remains filed under Frontier Accounts, unverified. By 89, the Montana Territory teems with ranchers, miners, railroad workers. The Rocky Mountain front supports cattle ranches, logging operations, small towns with churches and schools. Civilization transforms the landscape that once seemed infinitely wild, but the stories persist. Ranchers lose cattle under circumstances that defy explanation. Massive tracts appear in remote pastures, too large for any known predator. Occasionally, someone reports howls that carry too far and shake too deep to come from normal wolves. Most dismiss these accounts as frontier folklore, the kind of tall tales that grow naturally in isolated communities. Mountain lions and grizzly bears provide reasonable explanations for missing livestock and mysterious sounds. Human imagination fills the gaps that actual knowledge cannot explain. Yet some stories maintain consistency across decades and geographic boundaries. The same descriptions, the same measurements, the same sense of intelligence behind the encounters. Too many witnesses, too many similar details, too much correlation for simple coincidence. Dr. Patricia Vance encounters these stories in 1987 while researching paleontology in the Museum of the Rockies. Her specialty involves Pleistocene megafauna, the massive creatures that dominated North America until relatively recent geological time. Dire wolves, short-faced bears, American lions, predators that dwarfed their modern descendants, officially extinct for 10,000 years, officially. But what if something survived, she writes in her research notes. What if small populations of Pleistocene predators found refuge in remote mountain areas, evolved different hunting strategies, learned to avoid human contact until contact became unavoidable? The fossil record shows dire wolves reached 200 pounds, stood 4 feet at the shoulder, possessed jaw strength capable of crushing bison skulls. Not impossible that remnant populations survived in areas too remote for systematic human exploration. More intriguingly, recent genetic research suggests intelligence levels in late Pleistocene predators exceeded previous estimates. Pack coordination, tool use, environmental adaptation, traits that could explain reported behaviors that seem beyond normal animal intelligence. Vance never publishes her speculative research. Academic careers require peer review and reproducible evidence, neither available for creatures that may or may not exist. But her private papers, discovered after her death in 2019, include extensive files on anomalous predator reports from Montana, Idaho, and Alberta. The files contain photocopied newspaper clippings, rancher interviews, game warden reports, and one item that shouldn't exist: pages from a leather journal photographed in 1889 and filed under historical context, frontier accounts. Hartwell's journal, thought lost for over a century. Dale Whitehorse inherited his grandfather's ranch in 1995, along with the stories that came with 4 generations of living beneath the Rocky Mountain front. His family settled the area in 1887, built their homestead in a valley that provided protection from wind and access to water. Good cattle country, his grandfather always said, but he kept loaded rifles in every room of the house and never let children play outside after dark. Something lives in these mountains, his grandfather told him in 1963, the old man's final year. Something that was here before us will be here after us. We don't hunt it, it doesn't hunt us. That's the arrangement. Dale took the stories as family folklore until the winter of 1998. February snow, temperature 20 below zero, wind that cut through ranch buildings like knives. The kind of weather that keeps cattle bunched in sheltered draws and forces ranchers to break ice on water tanks twice daily. Dale found the tracks on February 15th while checking cattle in the north pasture. Massive paw prints in fresh snow, too large for any wolf, too deep for the snow conditions. The tracks followed the fence line for half a mile before disappearing into timber. He took photographs with his grandfather's old camera, developed the film at the local pharmacy. The prints measured exactly as family stories described: 7 inches long, 5 inches wide, claw marks extending beyond the main pad. Dale sent copies to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. The response came back quickly. Most likely mountain lion tracks distorted by snow conditions. Recommend maintaining normal ranch security protocols. But Dale knew mountain lion tracks. These weren't distorted by anything except their impossible size. The cattle told a different story. The herd stayed bunched tight for 3 weeks after the tracks appeared, refusing to graze in areas they normally preferred. The bulls, normally aggressive and territorial, moved docilely whenever Dale herded them toward the north pasture. Animals know things humans refuse to acknowledge. In spring 1999, Dale hired a paleontology graduate student from the University of Montana to conduct a survey of his property. Dr. Sarah Chen, working on her doctoral thesis about Pleistocene extinction events, jumped at the chance to explore private land in an area rich with fossil deposits. Chen found extensive evidence of ancient megafauna: dire wolf remains, short-faced bear bones, American lion skulls, standard Pleistocene assemblage for the Rocky Mountain region, dating to approximately 12,000 years ago. But she also found something else. Bones that didn't fit established fossil patterns, dire wolf specimens, but larger than cataloged examples and showing unusual morphological characteristics. Elongated limb bones, oversized skull capacity, dental wear patterns, suggesting a varied diet including vegetation. Adaptive evolution. Specialization for survival in changing environments. What if they didn't all die out? Chen wrote in her thesis notes. What if some populations survived by becoming more omnivorous, more intelligent, more reclusive? Evolution doesn't require extinction when adaptation provides alternative survival strategies. Chen never submitted those speculative sections for peer review. Academic careers require conservative interpretations of fossil evidence, not wild theories about surviving megafauna. But she kept the White Horse Ranch bone samples in her private collection. And when Dale called in October 2023 to report fresh tracks and new incidents, she drove immediately to examine them. The tracks she photographed matched descriptions from Hartwell's journal, now 200 years old. Same measurements, same characteristics, same sense of intelligence behind the placement and timing. Persistence hunting, she explains to Dale while examining the evidence. Following prey over long distances, wearing them down through sustained pressure rather than single attacks. Dire wolves use this strategy for mammoth hunting, extremely effective for large game. But we're not mammoths, Dale points out. No, but we've moved into territories where megafauna once hunted, and if something survived from that era, it would view us as just another large mammal species to understand and potentially exploit. Chen spends 3 days documenting tracks, scat samples, claw marks on trees. She finds evidence of systematic territory marking, scent posts placed at strategic locations, and what appears to be cached food supplies. Intelligent behavior. Planning and resource management. On her final evening at the ranch, Chen sits with Dale on his porch as shadows lengthen across the valley. The temperature drops toward freezing, stars emerge in the clear sky, and somewhere in the distance, something howls. The sound carries farther than physics should allow, resonates deeper than normal wolf vocals, and seems to come from multiple directions simultaneously. Chen records it on her digital equipment, but the playback captures only a fraction of the acoustic experience. How often, she asks Dale. 3, maybe 4 times a year. Always at night, always when the weather's changing. My grandfather said it was calling to others of its kind. Others? Dale shrugs. Family stories go back 5 generations, same sound, same tracks, same sense of being watched. Either it's immortal, or there's more than one. Chen packs her equipment that night with questions no academic institution would fund her to investigate. But she leaves Dale her contact information and a promise to return if new evidence emerges. 6 months later, in spring 2024, she receives a package with no return address. Inside, photocopies of journal pages, photographed in black and white but clearly legible. The handwriting belongs to someone whose hands shook while writing. Hartwell's journal. Complete pages she's never seen, describing encounters that match her own observations in precise detail. The package includes a note written in careful script. Some stories deserve witnesses, some truths require guardians. The mountains remember longer than humans live. Chen frames one page of the journal and hangs it in her university office. A conversation starter for students interested in the intersection of paleontology and folklore. Academic respectability maintained through careful presentation. But late at night, when grading papers or preparing lectures, she finds herself reading Hartwell's words again. Others will come, and when they return, if they return, they will carry stories that sound like fever dreams or frontier madness. Let this journal stand as warning and witness. We are not alone on this continent. 2 centuries separate Hartwell's expedition from Chen's research, but the message remains constant. Something lives in the high country that remembers when different rules applied to the natural world. Something patient enough to observe human expansion, intelligent enough to adapt its behavior, and powerful enough to remind us that some territories remain outside our control. The stories continue. Ranchers still lose cattle under unexplained circumstances. Hikers still report sounds that don't match any known wildlife. Game cameras occasionally capture images that defy easy identification. Most people dismiss these accounts as misidentification or hoax. Normal animals photographed in poor lighting, natural sounds distorted by atmospheric conditions, human imagination filling gaps that knowledge cannot explain. But Dale Whitehorse keeps a .45-70 government rifle loaded beside his kitchen window. Some nights, when wind carries sounds down from the Timberline, he remembers his grandfather's words about arrangements and territories. And sometimes, just at the edge of hearing, something howls back.